Hello and welcome back to Shoogly Shed Motors. Today, XJR1300 obviously. We got it running in the last episode and today I want to try and get it running a little bit better in the hope that I can then get the tank on and some fuel in it, the seat on, and then get the bike onto the road to go and get an MOT test done. So, first things first is I want to try and balance the carburetors. I bench synced the carbs when I rebuilt them, but I want to do a vacuum syncing now with my 4 gauge vacuum setup and my auxiliary fuel tank from earlier. Get the bike running, try and balance the carburetors a little bit. I also want to have a look at the plugs and see what kind of fuel mixture we're running on. I also have borrowed an exhaust gas analyzer from a friend, which might give me a little bit more of an insight into how the bike's running and any adjustments I can do to either the carburetors or just mixture screws and things like that, in order to get the bike running as best as it can right now. Again, it's running an aftermarket exhaust and pod filters. I've not changed the jets yet because actually it was running surprisingly well on my startup. So I want to get a better idea and see where we're at basically with the fuel mixture before I go buying different size jets and changing things out. I don't know if I've managed to just come up really lucky and hit the perfect mix straight off the bat. That would be pretty surprising, but I won't know until I get it all set up and do some analysis. Right, just as a wee point, I've got a fan running, blowing cold air against the engine because obviously this is a very big air-cooled engine which currently isn't going anywhere, so it's not getting an airflow across the engine to try and keep the temperature down. So I just doing everything I can to try and, don't cook the engine basically. Ewan, that would be a bad idea, especially after you've just given it a nice fresh rebuild. Anyway, obviously what I was doing there, if you didn't work that out, was the exhaust gas analyzer. I had the probe in the tailpipe of the exhaust. I'd already calibrated it to fresh air, and then you basically set it to 2%, put it into the exhaust with the engine warm and idle, and then you can kind of fine tune a little bit your mixture screws to try and achieve like kind of optimum mix, and depending on how far it deviates from that 2% CO level. I don't know if it's 100% the best way to go about this, but it's something that someone mentioned to me might be worth a shot, and it seemed to be, more or less, in the past, when I've come to balancing carbs like this, not balancing carbs, sorry, just adjusting fuel mixes, it's just about getting the bike to idle nicely, and that seemed to correlate to a decent level on the gas analyzer, so I'm hoping that I've kind of got somewhere in the ballpark. Now that that's done, I'm going to balance the carbs or sync the carbs with my vacuum gauges over there. And with the vacuum gauges, essentially just hooking each one up to an inlet of the carburetor and getting them all to sit roughly in the same position as the bike's idling. Again, the bike's warm now, so that's the perfect time to do it. Once I've done that and they're balanced, I might have to go back again and just give the mixer screws another little tweak. But in all honesty, I think we're actually running fairly well. If anything, I'm a tad on the rich side, which is quite surprising given that we've got obviously quite high flow pod air filters on the go here. So you'd have thought the opposite would be the case. It would be bringing more air than usual, but it seems to be ticking over quite happily, just a little bit on the rich side, at least as I can tell from the smell anyway. It definitely smells a wee bit rich. I'll also whip a couple of the plugs out and have a look and see what colour they're at, and that will also give you an indication of where my fuel mix is at. But leaving that aside just now, let's try and synchronise or balance the carbs. Right, if you've not seen one of these before, very simple. We have obviously our auxiliary fuel gauge, fuel tank, sorry, and then we've got 4 vacuum gauges and trim valves in line on the rubber hoses at the bottom. So we're going to hook each of these up to the inlets on the carburetors on the engine side, and then see if we can get the needle gauges to read roughly the same reading. Right, all I'm doing first of all is plugging the rubber hoses onto the carburetor inlets. There we go. Right, so all my gauges are zeroed out to begin with. I'm going to start the bike, so ignition's on, turn it over. Right, so that's the bike running, and looking at the gauges, my furthest right, so number 4 cylinder, is a bit out. These two aren't too bad. These 3 in fact are quite good, so I'm just going to adjust that last one on the side with a long screwdriver. Hopefully bring this into spec. Right, that's pretty balanced to me. That's kind of the first time I've really balanced 4 cylinders, like 4 carburetors like that. Like I said, I did bench sync them with a little bit of feeler wire and got them pretty close, and just that little fine tune for this number 4 cylinder really was all that was needed, and we seem to be yeah, in spec now, which is pleasing. The other thing I want to do is to take out a couple of spark plugs, probably all 4 of them really, and have a wee look and see what they're looking like colour wise, and that will give me another indication of, to basically how the bike's running. And then, to be honest, after that, maybe a little bit of playing with the mixture screws again, just to try and get a bit of a smoother idle, because it's the mixture screws adjusting your pilot jet, so your idling jet. So aside from that, they're not bad. They're pretty ballpark, in fact. Enough, I think, to get a tank on it pretty soon and to maybe take this thing out on the roads. It's currently absolutely pissing down with rain, so not going to be today, but we're very close now. Right, here are my spark plugs. This is cylinder 1. That's not looking too bad at all. Cylinder 2, very similar. Cylinder 3, slightly more suited, but even so, not bad. And cylinder 4, not bad at all things considered. So as I suspected, I think we're a little bit on the rich side, but that is really not too bad at all, considering like I said before, the upgrades and stuff that I've done to this bike and the changes from stock. So what I'll probably do is run the bike like this for a few miles, definitely to get its MOT and things, and then once it's been driven for a little bit longer than just sitting idling in the shed, hopefully these plugs will have changed colour a little bit more significantly, and that will give me a clear indication of where my mixture screws are at. But overall, that's not bad. Right, so a couple of days later, the auxiliary fuel tank's off now, as are the vacuum gauges. Hopefully the carbs are tuned enough now to get, you know, a couple of miles on the road before we can have a look at the spark plugs again and see where our mixture's at. But can't go anywhere without a fuel tank, so that's next up. Lovely, last thing is the seat. So good seeing the bike back together. Right, next thing to do is put some fuel in the tank and see if we can get it running off its own steam. Why am I so nervous again? She's running. There's only really one thing left to do, and it's get out on a road. Right, obviously the bike doesn't have an MOT yet, so that's the next job, is to take it to an MOT centre and get that test done. Then the bike will be road legal. I'm going to save first kind of ride out for another episode. Obviously going over and getting its MOT will be a big milestone as well. Aside from that, I'm getting kind of near the end of this long road that the XJR1300 has been. This project obviously is a bike for myself, unlike Musashi, the VMAX that I built. So I'm imagining many happy miles on this thing and lots of tinkering. So it's not disappearing off the channel. It's going to be living here, and I'll be coming back to it every now and again for little upgrades and tweaks and little teething issues, I'm sure, that will come out of the woodwork, just as with every custom built bike. There's always a couple of wee things to iron out, but for just now, I'm absolutely over the moon. with this result. It sounds so good. Honestly, the camera doesn't do it justice. It sounds so good. Anyway, as usual, please do give me a like, leave me a comment and subscribe to the Shoogly Shed channel. I have a couple of little announcements coming up shortly, including some potential new project-y stuff. So keep an eye out for that. Take care. Goodbye. It's not a good start. I'm wondering if